Each leader made a short speech in his own way to his men, desiring every coward to be off immediately. But here I confess, I would willingly have been excused, for my feelings were not the most pleasant. This may be attributed to my youth, not being quite 17 years of age, but I could not well swallow the appellation of coward. James Collins, patriot, 16 years old. Each one felt his situation. The last stake was up, and the severity of the game must be played. Everything was at stake. Life, liberty, property, and even the fate of wife, children, and friends seemed to depend on the issue. Death or victory was the only way to escape suffering. James Collins, patriot, 16 years old.
Major Ferguson had taken a very strong position upon the summit of the mountain, and it appeared like an impossibility to dislodge him. But we had come there to do it, and we were determined, one and all, to do it or die trying. The attack was begun on the north side of the mountain. The orders were, at the firing of the first gun, for every man to raise a whoop, rush forward, and fight his way as best he could. Thomas Young, patriot, 16 years old.
In most places, we could not see them till we were within 20 yards of them. They repelled us 3 times with charged bayonets, but being determined to conquer or die, we camped up a 4th time and fairly got possession of the top of the eminence. Isaac Shelby.
I was preparing to fire with one of the British advancing. I stepped back and was in the act of cocking my gun, with his bayonet running along the barrel of my gun, and gave me a thrust through my hand and into my thigh. My antagonist and myself both fell. Robert Henry, patriot, 15 years old.
The way that I fought after my arm was broken was to rest my rifle against a tree and take sight and generally take the man I aimed at. Whether my bullet brought the enemy down or not, I cannot say, for many were as good marksmen as I. Leonard Heiss, patriot.
Captain DePeyster raised a flag and called for quarters. It was soon taken out of his hand by one of the mounted officers on horseback and raised so high that it could be seen by our line. Robert Campbell.
The battle closed not far from sundown, so that we had to encamp on the ground with the dead and wounded and pass the night amid groans and lamentations. Benjamin Sharpe.
We whipped the British badly, who were commanded by Major Ferguson, Andrew Ferguson, 15 years old, free African American.
Next morning, early, the army commenced its march for their homes west of the mountains, leaving dead, friends, and foes unburied. Silas McBee.
We had neither a coward or a traitor to face the hill that day. We were the bravest of the brave. We were a formidable flock of blue hens chickens of the game blood of indomitable courage and strangers to fear. David Vance.
We made the prisoners carry their own arms, as we could not have carried them in any other way. Amongst the prisoners, I found some officers who had fought under me a few weeks previously at Musgrove's Mill. They said they had been compelled to join Ferguson, and when they had been examined and their account found to be correct, they were well treated. Isaac Shelby.
It will be understood that it was fought on our side by militia alone. By that victory, many militia officers procured swords who could not possibly get any before. Neither was it possible to procure a good supply of ammunition. William Lenore.
I am led to believe that 3 braver men and purer patriots never trod the soil of freedom than Campbell, Shelby, and Sevier. Benjamin Sharpe. During the whole of the expedition, except for a few days at the outset, I neither tasted bread nor salt, and this was the case with nearly every man. But outstanding principal rations were ears of corn, scorched in the fire or eaten raw, Such was the price paid the men of the Revolution for our independence. Benjamin Sharpe.
I have arrived today at King's Mountain and have taken a post where I do not think I can be forced by a stronger enemy than that against us. Major Patrick Ferguson.
Lay on King's Hill. About 3 o'clock in the afternoon, we were alarmed and got under arms ready for action. The enemy were directly upon us and made the attack. Uzal Johnson.
So rapid was their attack that I was in the act of dismounting to report that all was quiet and the pickets on the alert when we heard their firing about a half a mile off. I immediately paraded the men and posted the officers. During this short interval, I received a wound, which, however, did not prevent my doing duty. And on going towards my horse, I found he had been killed in the first discharge. Alexander Chesney.
The enemy, encouraged by the confusion of our militia, rushed upon Carl Ferguson, gave the word to charge again. He then rushed in amongst the rebels with about half a dozen men. He was soon shot from his horse. Uzal Johnson. It was thought most expedient to send out a flag to save a few brave men that had survived the heat of action. The engagement lasted an hour and 5 minutes. We were then reduced to the necessity of yielding to far superior numbers. Uzal Johnson.
Captain de Peyster succeeded to the command, but soon after gave up and sent out a flag of truce. But as the Americans resumed their fire afterwards, ours was also renewed, under the supposition that they would give no quarter, and a dreadful havoc took place, until the flag was sent out a second time. Then the work of destruction ceased. Alexander Chesney. King's Mountain, from its height, would have enabled us to oppose a superior force with advantage, had it not been covered with wood, which sheltered the Americans and enabled them to fight in their favorite manner. Alexander Chesney.
Our poor little detachment, which consisted of only 70 men when we marched to the field of action, were all killed and wounded but 20. Anthony O'Leary.
I am sorry to acquaint your lordship that on the 7th instant, Major Ferguson was attacked near King's Mountain by a body of the enemy. Their numbers enabled them to surround our post, and ours was only sufficient to form a single line on top of the hill. Abraham de Peyster.
Had I continued to remain in this capacity with my friend Colonel Ferguson, I might have suffered the same fate as he. Colonel George Hanger.
I remember well the deep and grateful impression made on the mind of everyone by that memorable victory. It was the joyful initiation of that turn of the tide of success which terminated the Revolutionary War with the seal of our independence. Thomas Jefferson.
The defeat of Major Ferguson was the pivot on which the war in the South, if not upon the continent, turned. If Ferguson had not fallen, the Battle of Guilford would not have been fought, and the Revolution would not have closed at Yorktown. Alamance was the initial, King's Mountain the decisive, and Guilford the closing battle of the Revolution. Yorktown was a siege. David Swain.
Let the battleground before us be left no longer as private property. Let it be made the inheritance of the people, that is, of all who are heirs to the benefits that were gained on the day which we commemorate. Let a monument rise upon its peak as a memorial of the heroism of our fathers, as an evidence of the piety of their sons. The deeds that were there performed bid us ever renew our love of country. George Bancroft, Secretary of the Navy.